My name is Gerry Weinstein, and I'm one of the founders of the Lilac Preservation Project. I guess the word got out that I love steamships, so the idea was sort of hatched that we ought to bring a working steamship to New York Harbor. So we arrive at this little creek off the James River, and we get out of the car, and there's this steamship sitting there tied up at the quay there. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a genuine antique steamship. Based on this windshield survey, is the best you could call it, I decided, okay, we're going to take a chance. We're going to take a chance that I know enough about old ships. I've looked at enough old boats that it's worth trying to get it. But at the same time, I was afraid that we would sink a whole ton of money in a ship that would turn out to be actually totally unviable, ready to sink. So we cut this deal with the marina owner there. He rented it out to a real estate agency, believe it or not. The whole back end of the Lilac was like maps of Richmond and telephone jacks. I think he said he wanted $25,000 for the Lilac. So what we did was we offered him $12,500. Yes, $12,500 to get the Lilac down the James River into a shipyard in Norfolk, into a dry dock, and then out of the water so that we could actually see what the hull looked like. And then we'd have a surveyor come in and they'd blast the hull and make her looking good, and then we would decide whether to keep her. If we didn't like it, he had $12,500 of my money, and he had his ship back. So that seemed like the way to do it. We might get a really good ship, or he gets his ship back. Like I kind of like win-wins. The next important thing is the ultrasonic thickness gauge test, where they take this ultrasonic gauge and they put it on the hull and they measure the thickness non-destructively. I think in the old days they would actually drill a hole in and then they could see how thick it was. Now you can do it electronically, and it was absolutely astounding how good the Lilac's hull was. Lilac was going to be towed from Norfolk up to New York Harbor. In order for a ship to be towed, the tow has to be approved by the Coast Guard, and their standards are very rigorous. Even if there was actually nobody on the ship, they still wanted to make sure absolutely that the Lilac would survive the tow and not sink on the way or break free of the tugboat and then become a hazard to navigation, or there are numerous possibilities for disaster. So we spent about $212,000 at Lyon Shipyard on making Lilac seaworthy, but also beautiful looking, because it had been sitting in this creek for like 20 or 30 years, and it was looking kind of sad. The paint was peeled. And so we wanted her to come into New York Harbor looking good, and we wanted to make sure that she indeed made it to New York Harbor. We should have gone directly into Pier 40, which was the Hudson River Park Trust Pier, where historic ships were designated to be berthed. But unfortunately, they decided that the pier wasn't ready for us. So we actually went into Erie Basin, where we tied up and spent a fair amount of time waiting for Pier 40 to be ready. Ultimately, they finished Pier 25, and which was a much better location for the historic ships, i.e. there's shore power, and there's also a water and sewer hookup. So now Lilac is at Pier 25, and at least during the summer season, we have a fairly civilized berth. And so we're open on weekends, Saturday and Sunday over the summer, and sometimes we get 80, 100 people on board. And sometimes the people come on board and it's like, well, what's this ship doing here? They come on, they walk through it, and they leave. Other times we get people who really want to know what this ship is all about. So I talk about the history of steam power. I talk about the steam engines in the Lilac. This is the Lilac steam engine room. On either side of me are triple expansion steam engines that powered the Lilac. This is the high pressure valve which distributes the steam to the high pressure cylinder. It drives it up and down. After the steam is finished working in the high pressure cylinder, it then moves on to the intermediate pressure valves, which in turn distribute the steam to the intermediate pressure cylinder. This cylinder is larger than the high pressure because the steam has lost heat and pressure, so it needs more surface area to do the same amount of work. And then when it's done working in the intermediate cylinder, it is exhausted into the low pressure valves, which then distribute it to the low pressure cylinder, which is the largest cylinder of all. We're in the Lilac's lower engine room, and this is the high pressure valve mechanism that lets steam into the high pressure cylinder, which is over here. That's the piston rod, the connecting rod, and the crank. The cranks are the source of the rotary motion that turns the Lilac's propellers. These triple expansion steam engines are a unique survivor from the time when engineers actually manually lubricated engines. And with oil cans, they would go around and put oil in every oil cup on every jointed moving connection on these engines, including on the main bearings. They would fill these. Part of the oiler's job on their watch was to circle these engines and make sure that every single oil cup had oil in it. Because failing that, these engines would rapidly break down.